Happy Friday. Welcome back to Can We Talk? You're here today with Quan Felton. Man, I want to greet you first with grace, love, and peace in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I'm so glad you're here. You know, like my man Martin would say, it's Friday, baby, and let's just get it popping. I'm here today with Pastor Sam Logan. How you doing, Sam?
All is well, my brother. All is well.
It's good to see you, man.
It's good to see you also, man.
It's been a long time, brother.
Yes, sir.
I'm very intimately, man. I have a very unique friendship and a kindred to this brother, man.
Yeah.
And, he's a blessing to me. He's a pastor of the beautiful church, New Hope Baptist Church over in Chesapeake.
Yeah.
How are you adjusting here now, Pastor Logan, with how things have kind of transitioned into ministry?
Man, it's a different world. It's absolutely a different world. March 15th, the third Sunday in March, was the last time we gathered together as a congregation in the building. And we immediately had to pivot, had to change, right. And the church did it. Yeah. The church did it. I'm incredibly proud of the way our congregation recognized the need to change, right. and started to make those changes. 1 week we were in the sanctuary. The next week we were on Facebook and YouTube, right. And we have progressively gotten better. I remember one time early on, we have a significant number of seniors in our church. Right. We're blessed, man. We got 5 generations.
Right. Okay. History.
And we've got history. And some of the older members weren't familiar with Zoom. So I remember one Sunday during Sunday school, one of the older Sunday school teachers, he spent the entire hour with the camera facing his ear. So we were looking inside of his ear for the entire Zoom conference. But now he's teaching Sunday school. Right, we can see his face. He's clear. And it's a blessing, man. The church has definitely had to make that change. Right. Technology has been invaluable during this season. Right. And New Hope is a great congregation. I'm proud to be the pastor.
So I know that you're an amazing father of daughters and sons and have the privilege to be the husband of such an amazing woman of God, Miss Logan. But I want to ask you this question, in all of that, working in ministry, being a young brother, looking at that, how have you tried to marry ministry and marriage? Has that been easy? Has it been challenging? What do you say, to those who are listening, like how you balance the two?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. And I will say that marriage and ministry is a lot to try to manage. Right. Marriage, ministry, and then to add the additional elements of family, right? Mm-hmm. So it's one thing to try to balance just the husband-wife relationship with all of the demands of ministry, but then you add the demands of children as well. Mm-hmm. And then many pastors, the average pastor today is bivocational. Okay. So it's the full-time job outside of the church, the full-time job that is the church, the full-time job that is the marriage, then the full-time job that is fatherhood. And, sometimes you can lose yourself, in the midst of it because you're continually offering yourself to everybody else. Right. But to be specific to marriage, my wife has been incredibly supportive of the fact that ministry is demanding, and she recognized it early on, of course, because she'd never been a pastor's wife before, right. And her role in the church was limited to laity. There are certain things that she just didn't know went on the backside. Okay. And it was an adjustment process, but she was very gracious to me. Okay. And very gracious to the church. Right. And, and I tried to make sure that I was present, in the church because it's my job, and it's my divine call, but I'm also called to be with my family. Okay. So I try to make sure that I prioritize them because my family does come first. Right. My family has always come first. Right. Okay. Yeah. That's your first ministry. Listen, before God created the church, God created the family.
He did.
Absolutely. And my experience, so my granddad was a pastor.
Okay.
And
so it's in your DNA.
It is in my DNA, man. But what's also in my DNA is recognizing that at the end of this pastoral journey, whenever it ends, there's going to come a time when the church can only walk with you so far. Okay. Your family walks with you beyond that point.
Okay.
And if you don't have a healthy relationship with your family, you may find yourself walking alone.
Okay, Pat, so we'll come back to that after
Yeah.
a quick break, because I really want to dig into that.
Okay.
I really want to go into that concept. So bear with us, man. We'll be back. Thank you so much, and just give us a few minutes. We really appreciate you.
Welcome back to Can We Talk? I just so appreciate you all. For those of you who are just tuning in, we're here with Pastor Logan, Dr. Samuel Logan III, Dr. Samuel Logan III, and just wanted to kind of get back into a place. So, Pastor Logan, before we left for commercial, you were telling me how balancing, the balancing act that happens in pastoralship. And, I want to kind of tap into that and ask you, if you're giving yourself to so many people, and so as people who are in public service, nurses who give themselves emotionally, mentally, psychologically to so many different people that you're caring for. How are you finding time for you, or are you finding time for you?
Yeah, man, that's a great question, and the timing of that question is interesting.
Okay.
For me. So back in August,
Yes, sir.
I sat down and I wrote a list of the people that I am primarily responsible for and responsible to, right? And I started making the list. My wife, my children. I'm a son, so I have parents. I talk to my sister regularly, and I started to, even friendships, friendships I wanted to maintain, manage, and invest in. Individuals who consider me to be a mentor, and then people who mentor me. I want to make sure. Yeah, right. The list is growing, right? So all of these are relationships that I was trying to manage. So I ended the list, and as soon as I ended the list, I realized that the one person not on the list was me. Right? I was the person not on the list. Now, there were some things that I would do to try to make sure that I managed life well and that I took care of myself, but they were very limited. Like Jesus, right? So in Mark 1, it says Jesus rose early in the morning while it was still dark, went to a solitary place to pray, so he can get himself together for the day. So I practice prayer, right? I make sure that I pray regularly as a method of self-care. But everything else was lacking. I wasn't going to the gym. My eating habits had become horrible. Just a lot of other stuff.
The pandemic weight.
Right? Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So all of these elements, I started to think, wow, you're just not doing a good job of taking care of yourself.
Yes, sir.
And I also realized that I wasn't doing a good job of managing my mental and emotional health either. Because the stress of trying to make sure that everything was managed well during the pandemic had really started to take a toll on me.
Understood.
And I reached out to a therapist. So in terms of taking care of myself, one of the things I do now is every other week, I sit down and have about a 45-minute conversation with a therapist. And he has become, he's an older gentleman, about 70, 75 years old. But he's a professional psychologist. We sit down and we talk about what's going on with Sam right now. What do you need to do differently? How do you need to adjust some things in your life so that you can live long and prosper?
Right.
Yeah, so certainly prayer and daily devotions and meditating on God's word, even what I listen to, singing, that helps me maintain, my mental and my spiritual health and my emotional health, but I still needed to go a step beyond that and have somebody that I could have regular conversations with, because I started to feel like some of my friends were being taken advantage of by me in some of my conversations because I was using them as my therapist.
So now, right. So it's like having a mechanic do heart surgery. And he ain't equipped.
But he's available.
He's available. And we tend to go to what's available, but not necessarily what's good for us. That's okay. Wow. So as we're digging through this, right? As we're digging through this in conversation, you mentioned something that I talked to in our previous episode, and I do want your take on it. It is a problem sometimes for people to tell people that they have a problem. and that I need help.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid to tell you that I need help. Yeah. So when we come back from commercial, right? When we come back from commercial, we're going to dig into that because that is something that I think is really needed, for people to understand. So we'll be back after these short break. Thank you. Welcome back to Can We Talk? For those of you who are tuning in, I just want to let you know how excited we're here to have you back with us as we kind of dig through these strong and very personal conversations with our friend and our brother, Dr. Logan. So, Dr. Logan, before we went to commercial, you touched on something, man, that within the church, and this is not specifically your church, but in general, within the church and even in the workplace, there is a taboo around therapy. Yeah. And unfortunately, the stigma has now diluted people's sensitivity on the need of it. I would like to hear your you you talk to somebody 45 minutes a week. Right. You know what I mean? I too myself have a therapist. I call her, I set the appointment. It's an hour a week. And how has that helped you? And what do you believe is the cause of this hesitation people have to say, hey man, I got a problem. I need professional help.
Sure. Man, that's a great question. Yeah. And I think I can give you an example.
Okay.
So I come from a family of people who work very hard.
Okay.
My dad, I've never seen my dad work one job. He's always worked multiple jobs. Even now he has a day job, a primary profession, and then he has another job as well. My mom, at one point, I saw her work a full-time job and a part-time job and was on call elsewhere. My grandfather, my father's father, same situation. He worked full-time as a pastor, but he also worked another job. He was bivocational.
Okay.
His wife, my grandmother, was a very hard-working woman. So hard work is a part of our family dynamic.
Okay.
Right? And I embraced it. And there was a time when I felt almost guilty for only working one full-time job, right? No matter how much the job paid, no matter what the benefits were like, I felt like I wasn't doing enough because I had free time on my hands.
Okay.
Even though I had a wife and children, I still felt like, man, I need to be doing something else because I'm not doing enough. And it wasn't until I sat down and talked with my therapist about the fact that I felt inadequate when I wasn't always moving, always doing, always producing.
Okay.
The conversations with him helped me understand the root of that. He said, so if that's what you saw in your father, and that's what you saw in your father's father, it's quite naturally that you would feel the need to replicate that. And I wonder what your father's life was like.
Wow. Okay.
And if we trace it back, I suspect that if we go all the way back to the days of slavery, when our people were forced to work without breaks, that you could trace your what you're calling your commitment to hard work. You could trace it back to that space.
Oh wow!
In your personal
really
history.
Understanding who you are and where you come from.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I thought, you know what? I probably could. And it's not the healthiest situation for me or for my family, because if I'm working two jobs, guess what? I'm not home as much as I could be,
money,
spending time with my wife and kids. I'm making money, but it's excess. Not that I'm rich by any stretch of the imagination, but with one job I can't survive. So I had to go back and look at why I felt inadequate for only working one job at a time.
So you felt that so you felt that by you having free time, there was an inadequacy within you as it relates to what was how?
Man, listen,
you're pastoring,
right?
You're working,
right?
And you and now, like, because between pastoring and working,
right,
you got a few hours to just really look at. Twiddling ain't your thing.
I felt guilty for sitting at home. So people would say, as a pastor, you need to take Mondays off. I'm like, who? I don't take Mondays off. I felt, that there is something that needs to be done somewhere, and I need to be doing it, right? And at some point, I realized that rest is holy, right? Rest is holy. If God did it, I
should
need to do it. And
it.
I could preach that.
Yeah.
I could teach that. I could encourage it in others. But when I decided to do it, I felt guilty about doing it.
wow.
And it got to the place where I didn't even know how to do it. So what do you do for fun? When that question was asked, I couldn't answer because working was what I did for fun.
And so in your leisure time, okay,
Yeah.
all right,
In my leisure time, I'm thinking about working.
wow, okay,
Yeah.
all right, we're gonna come we're gonna come back. Let's just hold that for a moment.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
Yeah.
Please stay tuned because I'm quite sure you would want to hear what is about to come up next. Stay tuned with us. Welcome back to Can We Talk? The Bible declares how good and pleasant it is for brothers to dwell together in unity. And we are here in unity having conversations that help us move forward as men, as the body of Christ, and even just as believers. So, Pastor Logan, before we left for break, I need to unearth this. Your guiltiness, right, came in your leisure time, and you hit on a point that you didn't know how to do it.
Right.
There are pastors who are preaching themselves to the grave.
Absolutely.
Neglecting families, now it's becoming an issue. We talked about the marriage early. In any way or shape or form, what you've done to build your work ethic, has that work ethic negatively impacted your marriage?
So I think my marriage and my family definitely could have been stronger years ago if I would have managed that part of my life differently.
Okay.
Yeah, period.
Okay.
And I know that I'm not alone in that.
Yes, sir.
You're right. The average pastor doesn't manage that well, and I definitely think that even though I knew it and was trying to do it, I could have done a better job with it. So let me give you an example. My girls, when they were cheerleading, I rarely missed taking them to cheerleading practice or being at a game.
Okay.
When my son was playing football, when he was playing basketball, when he was doing karate, when he was doing soccer, when the kids were doing soccer, I rarely missed a practice, rarely missed a game. If my oldest daughter was running track, a lot of times their track meets would be on Wednesday night. We have church on Wednesday night at 7. So I would be at the track, at the field, at the track meet, until about 6:45 because I wanted them to know that I was present.
Let them see.
Absolutely, because what I didn't want to be was an absentee father.
Okay.
I always wanted to make sure that I was very present in my children's lives. At the same time, I know that I could have been more present if I would have balanced my life differently. So was I there? Absolutely.
Understood.
Could I have been there more? Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. And so maybe the question now becomes, when did you recognize, at what point in this journey did you recognize I'm not where I need to be?
Man, that's a great question. And I'm telling you, these questions are so good because they are recent experiences for me.
Oh,
right.
So they're
not
that far removed from.
I'm not far removed at all.
That's good. That's transparency.
At the same time, I mentioned earlier making a list of people that I'm responsible to and responsible for.
Yes, sir.
I will tell you that, and I mentioned prayer earlier.
Okay.
During prayer one day, the Holy Spirit reminded me that you are doing a decent job of being present in your family's life, but you're not doing a good job of learning your children individually. So I knew my children as a unit.
Okay.
I know how we roll, how we operate as a family, what we do. I got us as a unit. But I wasn't spending one-on-one time with my children in a way that allowed me to know them individually.
Okay.
So my twins, for example, 2 girls, born together, been together forever. I know them as a set of twins.
Okay.
But recently I've started to spend time with them individually. And I've noticed that as much as they are alike, they are equally different.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I had to learn that one likes mint chocolate chip ice cream, right? And that's her favorite ice cream.
Yeah.
That's not the favorite ice cream of the other one. One is very analytical, in how she processes and thinks and the whole 9 yards. The other twin is analytical, but she's far more artistic, and one is no better than the other. They're just different. I would have missed the opportunity to hone in on those differences and try to cultivate them,
Right.
in the direction that God wants them to grow.
Right.
Just because I wasn't there as often as I could have been.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I mean, no, that I think that's really good because now there's an example of even individuals who are not involved in ministry, just fathers who have more than one child.
yeah,
Even with one child,
absolutely.
you need to understand that your child is.
Yes.
You can roll together as a unit. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean you're gonna. Everybody doesn't operate. Everybody operates in a different capacity. Has a different feeling about a certain situation. I want to kind of conclude our talk with this. We talked about family, we talked about manhood, we talked about, ministry. The church is in a very different place, and a lot of churches, this is a very sensitive subject for me. I'm not ashamed of it, but I've applied for positions, and churches are now allowing themselves to wait too late to say, I need somebody. I need somebody. What do you think a church, and then maybe be this experience, what do you think a church needs in order for it to move forward effectively to get the right person in their, in their congregation, to become a part of their family? We'll get to that right after this commercial break. Welcome back to Can We Talk? Here with again Pastor Logan. This, as I indicated, this last question for those of you who are just tuning in. This last question may be potentially for you or someone and I think it can be used in any field, expertise that you're working in. So the church now, as I was indicating, the church now is in a position where they're looking for qualified leaders. I'm seeing, unfortunately, even in the pandemic, I start to see a slight spike in availabilities in the pulpit. Churches are not, because churches can't necessarily sustain a pastor on the salaries that they once were on, and you're right, and the fact that maybe budgetarily, the congregation doesn't reflect that. The church has gotten another opportunity, and we're seeing COVID has really kind of helped. I don't want to say help; that's a bad word, but COVID has kind of made some positions vacant. Absolutely. Because of illness.
Right.
What do you think the church is potentially doing wrong? Right? What is the church potentially doing wrong, and how it plans for what it doesn't expect?
Yeah, man, that's an excellent question, and it's actually something I've studied.
Oh,
yeah, my doctoral work focused on succession planning in congregational churches.
Okay.
And I think one of the big challenges for us is that we do not plan well for the future on the pastoral leadership level.
Okay.
Right? There's got to be a plan depending on the type of church that you're in.
Okay.
So let me clarify that some churches are very hierarchical in nature. They're Episcopal, so there is a bishop, and once the pastor is off the scene, the bishop appoints somebody, to lead that congregation. So for them, it's a very clear process. The process is the pastor moves out, whether it's by death, by illness, by resignation, retirement, whatever reason, the pastor moves out. And the bishop says, okay, this is your new pastor.
Right.
Let's get it.
No discussion.
Absolutely, period.
Okay.
So the AME church functions like that. The Episcopal church, the Roman Catholic church, and many of our more less congregational Protestant churches focus like that as well. But many of our churches remain congregational, where leadership is centralized in the congregation.
Okay.
And it's not a bad thing. The problem is that when it's time for a pastoral transition, we typically don't have a plan for it. So then churches end up suffering for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years or more with no pastor because the pastoral search committee can't agree, or they just can't find the right candidate, not a good fit and that type of thing.
Okay.
But if we look at several models of leadership transition in the Bible, what we see is that there is a definite model, a definite plan for moving from one phase of leadership into the next phase of leadership. Moses and Joshua.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
A
Good
clear
example.
example.
Yeah.
Moses and Joshua were connected. Moses trained him. He taught him. He prepared him for leadership. And then there came a point where Moses said, Joshua is the next leader. He publicly declared
Right.
that Joshua
Okay.
is the next leader. And when it was time for Moses to move off the scene, everybody knew that Joshua was coming on the scene to lead. And what did Joshua do? He took him over to the
Right.
promised land.
Right.
We can look at the same thing between Elijah and Elisha. There was a definite moment where it was made clear to those in the community
Yes,
that
sir.
when one man leaves, the next prophet is stepping up to continue continue the work.
Well, you talked about Moses real quick. I mean, I just remember a very stark space in that conversation when Moses did die.
Yeah.
The congregation, where we understood what needed to happen, the congregation was still stuck on Moses till God says, Moses, my servant, is dead. He's gone. Right. It's gone. Is it plausible that churches have these challenges with succession just because they can't move beyond the current leadership that's in there because of the impact? We see the positive impact Moses had through coming out of, man, listen, you brought me, Pastor brought me out the biggest divorce I've ever, I got out of Egypt, he was oppressive, or she was, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I got out, not that we're promoting divorce,
Right.
but these things happen. And now when a new leader steps in, you now start comparing new leadership to old leadership.
Yeah.
And so new leaders we don't even have a chance coming in the door. Does your study, or have you ever looked at any aspect of that? And what does that look like, in your eyes when churches say, okay, we need a new leader, but we ain't ready?
Yeah. So I think that part of the challenge is the church having the space to say we're not ready. Right? They didn't have a chance to say between Moses and Joshua, we're not ready for a new leader yet.
Right.
You had to have a leader to move you from where you were to the next place, or you all would have been devastated. There was no space for the congregation to make that decision for themselves. There was a plan in place that said this is what's going to happen. And it was a divine plan.
Yes, sir.
Right? There was a moment where Moses heard God say, this is who the next leader is going to be. You prepare him for leadership, and then you sanctify him, in the eyes of the people as the next leader.
Right.
Openly declare that this is who God has called to lead in the next season.
Okay.
And let him lead.
So okay, all right. So we will stay. I'm enjoying every component of it, but this is hitting more closer to home.
Yeah.
Moses is now preparing the leader. So the mentor component. How does it help? Does it help in this transition for churches? Does it help them to stay more internal or external? Because if the model that's set up for succession is more internal, the church flows.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The external component, finding somebody to come in, may take a little longer.
Yeah.
So how does that impact it? How does that impact the flow of church? Because 5 years is a long time for somebody to say without a leader.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
We had a question about leadership no pun intended, you know what I mean, with the transition of presidency, with the uncertainty, like, hold on, what if he don't leave the house?
Right.
We done
Right.
swung one in without
Yeah.
one leaving. How, you know what I mean? And we
Yeah.
and stock markets was crashing. You know, people buying more guns.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
right.
So I can only imagine, like in the church,
Yeah.
like how is that
Yeah.
that unrest, that
Yeah.
uneasiness? So how does that how does that look? How does
Yeah.
that look when the churches, you know, are looking for a new leader? Do they look inside? Do you think has any of your research or any of your your thoughts looked at, man, should we stay internal? Is there a plan here in New Hope
Yeah.
that maybe you can draw from?
Yeah. So when we look at the biblical examples, what's very interesting is that the new leader spends years with the current leader,
Yes, sir.
before he steps in, right? So even if the person is coming from the outside, they don't come from the outside after the current leader dies.
Oh, okay.
You know, they come from the outside while the current leader is alive.
There's no conflict. So now you're building tension to my question.
Okay.
There's clearly a conflict of interest. There's a tension. You bringing me in from the outside. Y'all want me to be the new pastor? This is what your opening is suggesting. You may be saying that you want me to spend time with the new leader, the old leader to kind of just become acclimated with what's there. No, you ain't bring me in for that. I mean, because arrogance and pride can get in the way.
And pride goes before fall.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And the Holy Spirit before destruction. And I think the reality is that's one of the benefits of doing that before
who he is.
right
You know
before the
who or
current
she
leader
is.
leaves.
Yes, sir.
Because if the current leader is there and this is the attitude, that comes, it's very clear that you're not the type of leadership that we need.
Wow.
So you're not guaranteed anything.
Okay.
We want you to come in and learn, take the posture of a learner, of a student, to learn from my current leader.
Wow.
About how this church operates, what
Wow.
we do, how we function. One of the most valuable assets to me here at New Hope when I first started pastoring the church was the pastor who served as the interim pastor of this congregation for 3 years, Pastor Frank Guns, his son.
Okay, yeah.
John Guns pastors
Familiar.
in Florida.
Yeah, Jacksonville.
His other son Jeff pastors here in Norfolk, Second Calvary Baptist Church. An amazing family, right? Amazing people. Before day one, Pastor Guns invited me to his house, and he sat me down, and he had a yellow legal pad, and I still have the paper that he tore off from that legal pad and gave to me. And he said, these are some things that you need to do immediately when you start leading the church. There were about 10 different things.
Okay.
He told me what to do, and he gave me the why behind the what, right? So even though in this scenario, he wasn't here every day for me to kind of shadow,
Right.
he was still very present. He lives around the corner from the church,
right.
and he was always a phone call away. He was still very present, saying, son, if you do this, then think about this. If you don't do this, then think about this.
Right.
Now, he was always honoring the fact that I was the new pastor at that time.
Okay.
But I was always honoring the fact that he had done this job in this church for 3 years, and he had pastored elsewhere for 34 years before coming here. And I think that any new pastor does himself or herself a tremendous disservice by disregarding the fact that the church didn't start with you.
That's fair. That's fair.
That there was, no matter how old that church was, it existed before you jumped on the scene. Right. So you don't come in and write a brand new story, because to write a new story, suggests that you disregard the history that always exists. So what you're really doing, and Lovett Weems, who was a professor at Wesley Theological Seminary, suggests that you're not writing a new book. You are a new character being introduced in a book that God started writing a long time ago.
Okay.
So when you understand that you are the new character in the book that God started writing, then how you handle your position is a little bit different.
Wow. So do you think it's important, right? So and I think I kind of talked to you about this offset, about how, Bishop Jakes kind of used this in one of his master classes. He talked about, mentoring and modeling, you know. So Pastor Guns acted so much kind of as a mentor to you.
Absolutely.
To get you to the place. But who do you, you know, and I just want to kind of touch personally, who do you believe you're modeling now? And as it relates to ministry that helps you be successful in ministry.
Wow.
I mean, maybe I'm sorry if that was a.
No, that's a great question, man. And I think that there are several people,
right,
in terms of modeling and mentoring.
Right.
If I can combine the two, for the sake of time. Number one, I spent the majority of my life watching my grandfather pastor.
Right.
So sometimes I listen to myself and I hear his voice coming out of my mouth, right? Because and I look at some of the decisions that I make and I see his decision making, you know, and the fruit of it, you know, in the congregation. He, without question, was my first pastoral model, right, and successful in any number of ways. Stephen Pierce, Pastor Pierce from Holy Temple Church. Pastor Pierce, for me, was an amazing analytical mind, an incredible teacher. I learned how a church's budget ought to look from my time,
business,
you know, with Pastor Pierce. I learned what certain processes ought to look like in the church from Pastor Stephen Pierce. You know, so I see a portion of Pastor Pierce in what I do. Currently, Dr. Kirk T. Houston from Gethsemane Community Fellowship Baptist Church in Norfolk, an amazing pastor, an incredible mentor and preacher. Oh my gosh, absolutely, and a mentor for me. He has a fellowship called Iron Sharpens Iron that meets since the pandemic. We've been meeting every other week, and he takes the time to do teaching, to do training, to do mentoring with a small group of pastors who are willing to just say, hey, we recognize that you have 30 years of experience. We have far less, and we're willing to hear what you have to say. And since I started, as a matter of fact, Pastor Houston preached preached at the banquet when I was installed here as the pastor of the church. And from that day, his voice has been incredible for me, and our church has benefited from his voice in my ear, in ways that they don't understand. Another person is Bishop Kim Brown.
Yes, sir.
He and his wife, Elder Val, from the Mount have been extraordinarily encouraging, inspirational, and informational. Absolutely. And I'll give you an example. When the pandemic first started, our church was at a place where we were having to refinance the loan that we had for a mortgage on our second building. And I wasn't sure what was about to happen because this was at the end of March. The pandemic just hit. Everything was up in the air. Churches are closed. What's going to happen financially? How do I refi? How do I get the best rate? Then if I refi, what should I commit to? Should I extend the terms? You know, take it out for another 20 years instead of reducing it because we don't know what the next year or next 2 years or next 5 years will look like. That type of thing. I emailed Bishop and I emailed Elder. And before Elder could respond to me by email, Bishop had called.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he called and he said, hey, Pastor, I got your email. This is what I'm thinking. Let me share some wisdom with you about these things. And he said, you know, my greatest asset right now in ministry, aside from God himself, is my wife, because of her background in business and ministry and that type of thing. But together, they have been invaluable assets. And for me, what I learned from Bishop and Elder is that not every mentoring relationship has to be up close and personal. Sometimes you can learn a lot just by observing from a distance.
Watching from across the street.
Absolutely.
Watching from across the street. That's a very solid point. So now I think what you're telling us is that there's an ecumenical space of like parents. You share both your mother and father's DNA.
Absolutely.
Not one person dominates you. And so even in ministry, it is okay to resemble certain pieces of great leaders.
And I'll add to that, man, because you use the word ecumenical. So I was in Catholic school from kindergarten through 8th grade, right?
Catholicism?
Absolutely. It's a part of who I am in terms of liturgy and structure and symbolism and sacred settings.
Yes, sir.
Catholicism did that to me. It's a part of who I am. St. Mary's Catholic Church in Norfolk is where I attended Mass on Sunday mornings before going to St. Paul United Holy Church, right? So I have both experiences, and those things are ingrained. So it's no big thing for me to say today, we need to talk about the season of Advent. We need to talk about Lent. I'm familiar with those things because of the ecumenical nature of my background.
Wow.
So,
Pastor Logan, I really, I tease him. I'm so sorry. I tease him so often, calling him bishop.
Oh yeah, you only teasing, Doc. You only teasing.
Pastor Logan, we really appreciate you taking this time to talk to us, man. On Can We Talk?
Yeah.
And we're looking forward to the projects that you're going to put forth, and we hope at Can We Talk that you'll get back with us, man, and we can do this again.
Honored to be here, man.
It was a blessing.
Yeah,
so listen, everybody. If you ever want to have an opportunity to share a worship experience, don't hesitate to log on to www.wehavehope.org.
We have newhope.org.
We have newhope.org.
Yeah.
And tune in, man, and because I think it's rich. He's located in Chesapeake, Virginia. For those of you who are local, and he's one click away.
Yeah.
And ministry is happening here, even if we're not together.
Yeah.
I would always hear you. I would watch him sometimes and say, even if we're not together, God has gifted us with a tool to be together.
Yeah.
And that tool is through media, through the internet, and we thank God for you. Is there anything you want to leave with this, Doc?
No, sir. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for allowing me to share. Super excited for what you're doing here, man.
Yeah.
Pray God's blessings on you.
I appreciate it, man. May God bless you and may God keep you. And remember, every Friday, Can We Talk? Tune in. Be blessed, everybody. Thank you.